Kudzu by Julian Manthorne. The ferry arrived at the port just as the sun breached the horizon. The air was brisk with morning chill, and the smell of metal and salt was rising up on the light fog. Above the mist, the sky was a dusty yellow with thin, wispy clouds. "The sun's coming up. Brand new sky," Sam said, looking out the port window as the boat slowed to a stop. His seatmate, Elson, jolted awake as the ship bounced against the rubber stoppers on the wharf. Immediately, the rocking motion made his stomach do somersaults. When the attendants announced it was time to disembark, Elson pushed his way up the aisle, past a dozen cranky passengers, and to the railing, where he gave his breakfast to the sea. A few minutes later, Elson joined Sam and the rest of the passengers on the dock, accepting his duffel with a grunted thanks. They followed the rest of the passengers up the sloping gravel path, wide enough only for two people to walk. On either side there was a sort of wet-looking grass covering the rocks and dirt alike. When they crested the hill, they saw an endless yellow pasture, littered with narrow wooden houses branching off of thin, unpaved streets. "I don't like this weird grass," Elson said, wrinkling his nose. "I think it's lichen, actually," said Sam, leaning over the edge of the gravel path to get a closer look. The yellow algae had long, weaving tendrils that curled and split like tree roots, with the occasional limb corkscrewing away from the pack and reaching for the sky. "Stay on the path, please," an attendant called. Sam gave a sheepish glance at her and began walking again. He wondered what his new job at the Fender-Jones Company would be like. They were one of the first immigration companies to come to this planet after it was cleared by the UN for settlement. He and Elson had landed early in the morning at the Ambassador's Port, a tiny island that functioned as a rocket pad for all Fender-Jones immigrants. "Well, this place still has a long way to go," Elson said, and Sam couldn't help but agree. All the adverts they'd seen had prepared them for luxurious living, but this looked a lot more primitive. The road had been paved with rocks and was not wide enough for a car. On the left, an even narrower path branched off, and one attendant held up a placard with a large A painted on it, and called for those in Group A to follow her. The rest were ordered to continue straight ahead. Sam watched the first group hurrying along excitedly toward their new houses, pulling their rolling luggage behind them on little plastic wheels that were ill-suited to the terrain. "We're in Group F," Elson said. He tucked a square of paper back in his jacket pocket, pulled out a pack of paper-rolled smokes, and lit one with a cardboard match. He flicked the charcoal-tipped nub into the gravel path in front of them, making sure to tread on it as they continued. "We get the shit, huh?" Sam said. Like the attendants who were leading them to their new homes, they had come to be employed by the Fender-Jones Company. The rest of the new settlers were independently wealthy or heirs to some prodigious family back on Earth. Groups B and C departed, and the pace of the caravan quickened slightly. "No trees or anything around," Elson remarked dismally, and he was right. Everywhere they looked, it was only yellow and brown lichen. "Makes you wonder where the wood for the houses came from. Probably imported it." "They could have deforested this area," Sam noted. "This ground is too rocky. Nothing will grow here except for this stuff." Elson gestured at the sea of yellow that surrounded them on either side. "Explains why the houses are so small," Elson said as groups C and D were led away. "I expected us to be stuck in sheds, but even the houses for Group A and B look tiny. Can't be more than 2 rooms on each floor. Are you telling me that all these people paid $20 million to live in a matchbox just because it's on another planet?" he asked. The Group E people walking in front of them began to tune in. They had come for work too, joining the growing middle class. "They want to put roots here," Sam said. "One day these might not just be matchbox houses." Elson stopped his complaining and became occupied with his stale cigarette. Sam couldn't believe that his comrades still smoked those things. Anyone who maintained a habit these days had gone electronic. Elson finished half his cig, and then became displeased with the taste and flicked it into the lichen. The attendant noticed and stopped the group. "You need to pick that up," he said. Elson gave him a look and said, "You're kidding, right?" The attendant's frown deepened. "That's the rules. All trash has to be disposed of appropriately." "It's only a tiny bit of paper. It'll dissolve in the next rain," Elson rationalized. The attendant took 2 steps forward, pushing past Sam so he could get right up in Elson's face. "Do you know why all these ships are leaving Earth, Mr. Calloway?" he asked. "The thrill of exploration?" Elson ventured in a bored tone. "No. They want to leave behind all the problems that Earth has, especially the stinking pollution. If you wanted to throw your trash on the ground like an animal, you should have stayed on Earth." All right, Elson said, mostly just to shut him up, and bent over the edge of the path and snatched the butt out of the oily yellow fungus. Elson rubbed his fingers on his pants, all the more repulsed. Later that night, they sat on Elson's tiny balcony, each holding a beer. Their houses were small but well equipped. Sam had settled in nicely, thinking how much better these houses were than any of the anonymous hotel rooms he had stayed in, or even worse, the cramped barracks where you wake up every time someone walks to the bathroom. Elson was glad to have his own space too, although he remarked that his first apartment had more square footage than the main floor and the upstairs together. He smoked 4 more of those old cigarettes, saving half the pack for tomorrow, and flicked each butt over the waist-high railing and into the yard below. "I think I should turn in," Sam said, when his empty bottle had grown warm from sitting against his knee. The sun was going down, and only the last sliver was left peeking over the horizon. The land was almost completely without vegetation, and the horizon was visible from 360 degrees, as if they were out at sea. Green and silver clouds hung against a darkening pink and blue sky that swirled like a Van Gogh painting. The land here was bland, but the sky was always moving, colors mixing together in the upper atmosphere. "You've only had 1 beer, Elson protested, running a hand through his dark hair. "One's all I need. Early day tomorrow." He got up and reached out his hand for a shake, and Elson obliged. Sam went down the stairs and out the front door, careful to stay on the gravel path as he made his way across the road to his own house. The days were 18 hours long on this planet, and Sam was exhausted. He locked his door when he went inside, more from habit than any real threat. He looked in his fridge, but closed it again. He took a shower and was pleasantly surprised to find that the water was hot and the jets were strong. He dried off in front of a long mirror and tossed his towel in the yellow laundry basket. There was a tiny square window above the bathroom sink that traded steam for cool night air. Sam shivered as he brushed his teeth and flossed. There was a scent in the air, so faint he hadn't noticed it before. It was a sweet smell, the smell of slow decay. If it wasn't for that smell, Sam thought, I might just forget that this wasn't Earth. He got into bed, feeling the instant comfort of having one's own blankets wrapped around them. The next morning, Sam was walking down the road to work when suddenly he stopped dead in the center of the gravel path. Elson's house was completely gone. The narrow path that had led to his friend's porch was all that remained to say that anything had been there at all. Sam frowned and stared at the lichen, hardly believing his eyes. Was it possible that he had been moved during the night, or something? He looked around frantically, watching lights flicker on in the houses around him, and people shuffling to work along the gravel road. Already it was nearing 7 o'clock, and if Sam wasn't careful, he might be late. But who could even think about work when something so, impossible had happened right under your nose? Sam crept down the gravel driveway, right up to where it met the endless yellow, and reached out his hand. He half expected to find the grainy wood boards rendered completely invisible, but his hand fell through the air. His toe sunk into the lichen, and he took another longer swipe, but again, nothing. He ventured his foot a bit further, and felt it slide on top of the wet fungus. A gray fluid oozed from the lichen and puddled around his boot, coming up to the laces. The little yellow fingers began to surface through the gray oil and cling to his boot. Sam's eyes grew large, and he withdrew his foot in horror, almost knocking himself over as he staggered back down Elson's driveway, careful to keep both feet on the rocks. As he reached the main street, his face became ghostly pale. The driveway was erasing itself without a sound, being consumed by the lichen. He stood like a statue, watching the yellow tendrils pull the gravel under. 6 inches from the toe of his left boot, it stopped, forming a neat line with the rest of the street, and became completely still. Sam stared into the endless yellow meadow and felt, or thought he felt, it staring back at him.